There is power in personal stories. It connects us, it empowers us, and it holds us accountable. It creates understanding and expands our perspective. This is Big in the Community with Jonathan James at the Kalamazoo Promise, a podcast aimed to highlight local leaders, collaborators, and innovators in the greater Kalamazoo community. All right, welcome once again. We are here with Big in the Community, and we have a wonderful guest with us today. But I'm going to start us off with a quote before we get started. I think it's fairly unique to define the end goal of K-12 schooling as helping students become better thinkers, more creative thinkers, and to organize the whole school around creative and critical thinking. And that's Eva Sarah Moskowitz, an American politician and education reform leader. But we have someone here with us who's big in the community, also our neighbor, also dresses wonderfully, if I have to say, because otherwise I'm looking a mess but you guys will see that in the video. If you're just listening, we have a very similar outfit on. But without further ado, I'd like to welcome James Devers, Executive Director of Community and Schools of Kalamazoo.
All right. Thanks for having me, Jonathan.
Yeah. Round of applause. So, James, how long have you been in your current role, and how long have you been in Kalamazoo?
Okay. So, been in my current role for 4+ years, and I've been in Kalamazoo. That's kind of a double question because I was born and raised here, but I was gone for 22 years. Okay. So, between those, over that time, maybe about 28 years in Kalamazoo. Yeah. But this is my hometown.
Yeah, you came back.
Yes, exactly.
What made you come back?
So there was nothing in particular that made us come back. My wife is also a Kalamazoo native. One day, July 2017, we were having a conversation, and we just had a feeling that it was time to come back.
The day, though.
Oh, yeah. Because we, again, no pre-planning, no conversation prior to that conversation around the 4th of July, 2017. And we relocated to Kalamazoo by the end of September. Wow. So it was a very whirlwind experience. But again, no particular reason. It was just a feeling that it was time.
Okay. I like that. So how do you engage with the Kalamazoo community?
Well, the nature of our organization, Communities and Schools of Kalamazoo, it sits at the intersection of all of the aspects or the industries within our community. So the education sector, the social service sector, the business sector, government sector. So all aspects of, what makes a community, they intersect to some degree through CIS. And we try to bring the resources, the expertise of those various industries and sectors into the school environment to support our students.
No, I definitely see that. I see you guys, you're present almost everywhere. Like you were saying, all those different sectors, all those different ways that you can interact with the community, you guys are there. I appreciate the work that you do. I know whenever you've been in meetings and stuff, and I hear you talk, I'm like, man, this is some profound stuff. I need to start taking notes. I mean, I joke about that a lot, but the people who I have come on this show, I see something that they're doing. I see something in them, and I think it's necessary for other people to see that as well.
Okay. Appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah. So how would you say you collaborate with the Kalamazoo Promise and other organizations?
Okay. So collaboration for communities and schools takes different forms. In some cases, that's us providing an access point for various organizations in the community to engage students. So I like to describe what we do kind of like logistics. So if we're in the business sector, UPS delivers the package, but the product is being created by one company and it's being delivered to another company. So CIS is somewhat of like a community logistics organization. And our main charge is to create a pipeline and access points for various organizations in the community. And so as it relates to the Kalamazoo Promise, in terms of, direct service, and again, I know that you all are evolving, particularly in the last 3 or 4 years, but what it does, some of the things that we do allow access points for the Kalamazoo Promise. Prior to that, I would say our roles were more complementary because our mission is to get students to graduation, and then your mission is to engage those graduates and to take them to where they want to go next in life. So very, very complementary in terms of our formation, but in terms of the work that we do now, we're still learning just different access points that make sense for both organizations to work together.
I like how you sum that up, the access points, because a lot of other organizations, they come to us thinking we have students, like we have them in the building, right, or we have programming. I mean, we've started doing, like you said, we've evolved, but we don't literally, like, sometimes people think we are KPS,
right,
which we're not. But I think that's where our relationship is so important, because you create those access points for us to come along, collaborate, figure out ways we can help as well. And I think even that continues to evolve. I mean, we share the office space. You're
right,
our neighbor,
right,
quote unquote neighbor. But your team is amazing. I know, I've seen the way you guys work, and it's awesome. I take notes from the stuff you guys do too, and try. I swear, I see all these different organizations. I say, okay, what are they doing that works? What is it that we could take back to our space, and us sharing that space? Doing the like the Christmas party or the holiday party that
right,
we just had. Coming together in those ways. It's good,
because
sure, you guys actually genuinely interact with the students on a day-to-day basis, and we don't necessarily have that. So that's where we can work together. So
for sure.
So enough about the job.
Okay.
Enough about that. What's your story, and who are you? So, like, how did you get here? You can go back as far as you want.
Yeah.
Share whatever details you want. It's, this is just an open-ended,
right,
whatever you want to share.
Yeah. So I think probably one of the most interesting parts of the journey for me is having that 22-year gap. It's kind of weird because as I mentioned, by growing up here and then being gone and coming back, even though there's this large gap in the middle, the time distance feels like it's very short. And so I guess in terms of who I am, again, Kalamazoo native, born at Borges Hospital back in 1972. So I don't mind dating myself. But in terms of even just, I guess, the beginning, the beginning is very much a part of my story and very much connected to the work that we do now. So, back then I'm born to an 18-year-old, my mother, who actually is married at the time. And she had been married already for 2 years because she got married at 16. And my mother is Mexican. My father is African-American. And that part also is a huge part of my story. And so I would just say that because of the circumstances of their relationship and some of the challenges that existed within the relationship, my life experiences keep me grounded, and they keep me connected to the population that we serve today. So I grew up in poverty, grew up in a home where there was domestic chaos, witnessed family members struggle with alcohol, with drugs, and yet and still I had to walk this journey in the community as a person who is traveling the education highway, so to speak, and getting ready to have a bunch of life experiences. But the things that I experienced as a child oftentimes are associated with someone who can't make it or somebody who won't make it. So I draw from that a lot, even as I gauge people today, in my current role, in my current position, from an understanding that the assumptions people make about people who are in or have come up in those circumstances are false assumptions. And I say that as a person, not as a person who's academically studied poverty, but as a person who lived in it, around it, amongst it, and understands some nuances that are often discussed when we talk about the work that we do in 2023.
No, I appreciate you sharing that. I know that's probably not the easiest thing to share, and also there's no telling how many times you've had to share that story. One of the things that Dr. John, shout out to Dr. John, before he had left, he had told me I need to work on my own story and how to share that. And even right now, I'm taking notes. I'm like, okay, this is how he was able to share this difficult thing, and pick the pieces of it that he wanted to share, but also stay composed during the whole thing. Because I shared my story, and it was rough.
Yeah.
And I think that's what he was trying to say, was how do I do that? I thank you for sharing that and letting me see that. So
so a couple things on that. One, I have been sharing it for a while. Again, most of the time, it was in another city, in another community. So it was cool to just see how my Kalamazoo story resonated in another place. But it's been even, I would say, even more impactful, I think, locally. One of the things I did do, though, is I did talk to my family when I came back and told them that, I tend to share my story. And I got their permission to share my story, because I also understand that our stories intersect.
Yeah.
And there's some things, that I'll share about my life. I wanted to make sure that they were comfortable, particularly my mother and my siblings, that they were comfortable with me talking about these things publicly. And, they gave me the green light to share. So that, so I kind of did some first work there. And the second thing is this, and if you don't mind an analogy, when I was about, late elementary, early middle school, playing in the backyard, long story short, is I got burned, right? I touched a motorcycle and the exhaust was still hot. I was reaching for a ball and I burned my arm. So if anybody's ever been burned significantly, it's painful when it gets burned, and even the healing process is painful. But eventually it does heal. And even though my skin is intact, you can still see the mark on my arm where I was burned. But in a physical sense, one of the things I say is that, you can still see the scar, but it doesn't hurt anymore. So even when I tell my story, I have been healed, like, internally from some of the, some of the impact of the pain. So when I tell the story, even though I'm still connected to it, and at times I do get emotional, one of the things that makes it easier for me is that I have been healed. And, so I can talk about it. I can show you the wounds and share the scars and the lessons and all of those things. But because I've been healed, it doesn't hurt anymore like that.
Okay. So it's not like pulling off the Band-Aid.
Right. Exactly.
It's already been taken care of.
Exactly.
Okay. Taking notes. So, you touched on this a little bit, but what motivated you to get where you are now?
Interestingly, again, counter to the narrative about folks who grew up in those circumstances, it was just, that was my expected path. And it wasn't like, there was a whole bunch of people in my ear saying, you got to go to college. It just seemed like the natural progression. You go to high school, you do good in school and I did. So the next step was to go to college. And I wasn't a person that was big on vision or anything like that. So very simply for me, an ideal life would be one in which I had the type of employment where I could take care of my family and that my family would be intact. So that was the extent of my aspiration. And just all of these other steps along the way were just part of the journey, which certainly was an up and down journey, a lot of ins and outs, a lot of different experiences along the way. But all I really wanted to do was have a family and be in a position to take care of them. And I just felt like school was my pathway for that.
It's pretty straightforward when you put it like that. I'm like, I don't know what I was all upset about as a young person. You were just like, it's just the next thing.
Yeah.
but that having something like that that's driving you forward, even if it's as simple as like that's the next step.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
Having that is amazing, and just like having something that drives you, moves you forward, and remembering that, and not it. And there was no. I'm trying to think, like, as you told me your story and told me everything, there wasn't a part where you were like, oh, I want to have this. Like, it was, I want to have my family, take care of my family. It's very selfless. So I'm taking notes. I'm just like, okay.
Well, again, when you grow up poor and you don't have what you need, that's a version of being rich, right? And when your family is broken, from the standpoint of just whether they're together or whether they're separated, there's nothing, I guess, for me personally, like that was like ideal living, right? Just being able to eat when you need to eat, to get what you need to get, and to have, a home life that wasn't chaotic and harmful. So it felt, I make it sound simple, but it really felt like a really big thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, and even I'll say personally, like not you growing up in the home that you grew up in, and then wanting the home that you want, or the home that you have now, and then not even seeing that speaks a whole lot just in itself. So you saying this is what I want, even though I didn't necessarily have exactly what I wanted growing up. And so that's a part where like our stories are similar, which I'm still working on how to say it.
That's fair. That's fair.
So I see the similarities. And one of the things that I struggle with now, like even as a married person with 2 kids, I still struggle with this, like my wife's expectations and how she saw marriage going.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? I have to do what?
Yeah.
I can't just go do what I want whenever. So I'm still having these growing pains of like, oh, this is what's required of me. This is what I'm responsible for. I knew what I wanted and I have what I wanted, but I'm still learning of what it takes to deal with that.
Yeah.
So, okay. It's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot, but it's good.
But it's one of those things like we don't learn growing up. It's not, you don't learn it K through 12. You don't, unless you see it, see other families and see how they do things, and you take bits and pieces of what they have and try to add it to your own.
Right.
But yeah, I appreciate you sharing.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
Yeah. So, what would it be if you could do anything to transform Kalamazoo? What would it be? Regardless of politics, money, literally anything.
Yeah. And politics and money is the reason why we don't, you even have to ask that question. But I think at the end of the day, I don't know if it's a thing. And I think that's part of the challenge is we're focused on the thing. When I say the thing, I'm talking about, the money. I'm talking about the model, the program, the institution. Like we're focused on the thing, but the most impactful element in a person's life are people. And so it's like we're building things, but we're not necessarily building people that have the capability of producing the outcomes that we're looking for. So, again, even though when I was gone, I was still observing, what's going on because, it's my hometown and I came back a lot. My family's here, both my wife's family's here, is I know that a lot of what we do in some of the earlier stages was based upon things that we saw with the Harlem's Children's Zone, right? And the innovative work that Jeffrey Canada did in that community. And so a lot of communities came and did observations at the Harlem Children's Zone, Kalamazoo included, and like, okay, we want to do that. We have the resources to do that. And many communities started off with kind of like checking off those 2 boxes. But how many communities had a Jeffrey Canada? how many communities had the people that work under Jeffrey Canada studied them and understood their skill set, their heart, their passion, their story, to try to create a team that's capable of producing what everybody is seeing now. And so a lot of times that's kind of, I think, even as I look, at the community from within the community and also as an outsider, no, Kalamazoo doesn't have a resource problem. But if we're honest, we have a people problem. And there's some work that we need to do internally as people in order to produce the community that we say we want. And, and that comes, that hits everybody, right? If somebody says, I want to get out of poverty, well, there's some work a person has to do. If we're saying as a system, we want to be less discriminatory and we want to give people equitable access, then that's some people work. Yeah. Right. And until we're willing to address the people work, then all of those things break down at the point of people contact. And, not to put anybody or anything on blast, but when I hear the stories around the community, I've been in situations where I've seen officials, leaders who I believe had a genuine passion and desire for some change, but at the people-to-people level, the organizations weren't reflective of that. But again, that's where the rubber hits the road, right? Institutions don't discriminate, people do. And that's so, tough. That's...
That's tough. No, because it sounds like that's a whole thing that we could get into, like, for a whole podcast episode. I've seen places that have the structure, the organization, the resources, like you said, but not necessarily the people that are passionate about it. And then a lot of the positions even that they're in are just like stepping stone positions. It's not, I'm not going to have a career in this position where I'm helping young people, but I have to build relationships with these young people, and then I'm gone after a year or two. Yeah. So there's so many layers to it of maybe someone started off passionate and then that kind of just fizzled out when the rubber hit the road and they couldn't help the way they wanted to, or they realized how hard it was to do the work. Or there's just people who need a job and they're just there and they don't have that passion, that drive, that thing that keeps them trying to do more and do better and adjust. And there's even people who've been there forever who won't adjust, who are like, no, this is what we do. This is how we do it every year. But they won't let go. Yeah. And like you said, there's the stories. We were talking about stories this morning, and we were talking about how we have had the highest enrollment, like for Promise students, and we were over budget for how much money we thought we were going to give out, and we ended up giving more, like $1 million more, which is amazing. But then there was just a news story that came out that said, enrollment rates are down and all this other negative stuff. And it's just like, well, internally we know we're doing a great job, but externally it doesn't look like that.
Yeah. So. And I would, first of all, I would say, to encourage you in this, the Promise's number one job is to provide the opportunity. And there's nobody that you turned away who was eligible. You didn't, that you said, okay, you can't have the opportunity that you're entitled to. So the Promise is, 10 for 10, 100 for 100, bat 1,000 on providing the opportunity. So that's one piece that I would encourage you all to keep at the forefront. And so then the second part of it is, a lot of times it's attached to the Promise, but this is more of a community responsibility. All of those different industries that I mentioned is to prepare people for the opportunity, right? Because, and this is just with anything, right? It's one thing to give somebody a chance. It's another thing to give somebody a chance who's ready for the chance versus somebody who's not ready for the chance. And so as it relates to, and I say that from a community standpoint, because that's K-12's responsibility, that's CIS's responsibility, that's family, neighborhood responsibility. Like, it's the community's responsibility to get our children ready for the opportunity. So that's one piece. The second piece, I think, is also, I'll just be honest in this sense. As a person who grew up in poverty, I don't feel like we're necessarily on the right path of preparing people for opportunity. Mm-hmm. And when I say that, I'm just going to give a couple examples. So at times, our family, we moved a lot in Kalamazoo because, pay rent late, all of that kind of stuff. Eventually, they're like, they're not going to renew. Not that you don't want to renew, but they're not going to renew.
Yeah.
So where I'm getting at is that when you move around a lot, you have different situations as relate to poverty. There are times when conditions are not ideal. Mm. But I could never think of a time when our food was low, where we were in transition, where our mother didn't make sure we still went to school. Mm-hmm. She never changed her expectation of us to do what we were supposed to do in the classroom just because we were having challenges. Mm-hmm. And when I say that, when I talk about preparation for opportunity, anybody who's ever been to college, right, and completed, mm-hmm. we'll just say a bachelor's degree, it's a 4-year journey where life takes place. Mm-hmm. There's the school stuff and there's the life stuff, mm-hmm. right? But if a person is conditioned to move forward, mm-hmm. even in the midst of adversity, that's a mindset that prepares you for that 4, 5, 6-year journey. Mm-hmm. But if a person is conditioned to say, because you're going through adversity, it's okay to stop, mm-hmm. then when they get into an area or an industry or a task that has a long-term responsibility, mm-hmm. when those adversities come, we tend to go to our default. Mm-hmm. Okay, you mentioned being a father, right? And as much as you have to deal with all of these kind of things, there's a time when you're not feeling it. Mm-hmm. As a dad, you're not feeling it as a husband, but you still got to deliver because that's what the situation requires, mm-hmm. right? And so I'm saying all that to say is I listen to conversations and I listen to even some of the systems that we're setting up, mm-hmm. For our children, for our young people. And I'm just wondering, are we preparing them mm-hmm. for the opportunity? When I was growing up, I rode the Metro. Mm-hmm. But riding the Metro is what prepared me to ride the Greyhound. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah.
And so when I got the scholarship to a college out of state, mm-hmm.
you're just fine. You're like,
I'm just getting on the bus.
New. Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. When I had this situation, and again, if you want to cut me off at any time, please let me know.
You're good. Go ahead.
So my second year in college, my mother gave me the latitude to handle my own business. Mm-hmm. I wasn't good at handling my business. So I didn't fill out my financial aid paperwork in time. Mm-hmm. So I missed every deadline. And by the time we got deep in the first semester, I had no financial aid package. Mm-hmm. And they cut off my meal plan. I had an eviction hearing for the dorm. Mm-hmm. So, things were falling apart financially. Mm-hmm. But it never dawned on me, to not go to school.
Yeah.
Because as I mentioned to you before, how I was raised by my mom mm-hmm. was, again, there's challenges in your life. But, son, you still got to do what you got to do.
Yeah.
Don't use that for an excuse.
Mm-hmm. You're conditioned. I
was conditioned.
You had everything you needed to keep going.
Mm-hmm. And, and so just obviously I graduated at some point. So things worked out thanks to my mom. She helped me talk to the right people and things got fast tracked. But I'm saying all that to say is I think when we look at poverty and we look at the experiences that people have, we only look at the deficits. Mm-hmm. Your opening quote was about creativity. Mm-hmm. When you don't have the standard items that people need or typically use for certain things, mm-hmm. creativity kicks in as you try to figure out a way to make it work.
Mm-hmm. You got to be innovative.
Yeah. I'm old, right? So when our antenna broke on our TV, we learned that aluminum foil
right. You gotta put the
could
foil
help you get a
there.
reception, right?
Yep.
And no, it wasn't the ideal thing, and maybe no, should have been. It's not good that people aren't in a position to go buy a new antenna. But the point is that there's assets mm-hmm. that our children have, despite what their circumstances are. In some cases, because of their circumstances, are we building on their assets? Mm-hmm. Are we reminding them of what they actually have, or are we just talking about what they don't have? Mm-hmm. And again, when you go into environments down the road, particularly when you're traveling a journey or a road that people in your family haven't traveled, mm-hmm. you need all the assets that you can take with you. Mm-hmm.
This is why I brought you on the show, because I know just from the little conversations that we've had and the meetings that we've been in together, I've seen like you're just like a fount of knowledge and wisdom, and then also you've had that perspective. You've had the necessity that leads to innovation. You see different ways of what is it that we can do that hasn't been done already, and if it's not working, what do we need to change? Mm-hmm. Aluminum foil works. it that can apply to different things too. Okay. Anyway, let's keep going.
Okay. Right.
What are some of your favorite things about Kalamazoo? Restaurants, people, family.
Yeah, I guess I would have to say family. Mm-hmm. Because our family is big. It's huge. And
how big is your family?
So my mother had 8 siblings. My dad had 8 siblings. My stepdad had 12 siblings. Okay.
Some math.
Yeah, you can do some math, right? So that's just, that's 30 aunts and uncles, and they all had kids. Yeah. And again, because of my age now, we're probably 4 generations. My mom was born in Kalamazoo too, so we're 4 generations in Kalamazoo. Wow. That big of a family, that many kids. So it's a lot of people. That we love and we care about. And my wife is also, her family is pretty big as well. So that's probably the thing that I love most about being here is that our family is here. Because again, for 22 years, we were in a big city where we had no relatives.
Whole different experience.
Yeah.
Okay, so you saw like, oh, we need to. That's crazy to me. You gave back. You made the decision, and we're back that quickly. That's amazing. I mean, that says something about Kalamazoo. It does. Yeah. If the Kalamazoo Promise was available to you, how would that have changed things for you?
That's tough. Only because the scholarships that I earned were tuition scholarships. I had an academic scholarship, full tuition at the University of Iowa. So that's where I went first. So I imagine, first of all, probably the decision-making process would have been different because I would have been looking more closely at in-state schools than out-of-state schools. So that's probably one piece.
If it wouldn't, that's fine too.
Yeah. So that's probably the biggest piece is that it would have had me looking closer to home more.
Okay.
But thankfully, I was blessed to,
go there, work it all out. Yeah. I mean, we know the end of the story. It all worked out, but it's just looking back. Oh, would it have changed things for me? Maybe not. What is a gold nugget of information that you would share with someone who'd like to do the same work as you? I know you shared some stuff already, but if there's anything specific.
Yeah. Well, it kind of goes back to a conversation that we had about a little bit earlier. I was telling a long version of the story again, but I was in a meeting one time, and they were provide technical assistance. And one of the things the person told us was that he said passion is not enough. He said passion is important, but you have to be able to blend passion and skill. And, when that was mentioned that day, it stuck with me in a way, it just stuck with me. And so I think that that would be the nugget, is the work that we do is kind of like a cross section of social services and education, which are very passion oriented industries. But to be most impactful, passion is not enough. You need to be passionate, but you also have to be skillful, particularly if you want to make an impact. Now, if you want to be in the job, you can find a lot of things that'll give your heart flutters for, just doing good stuff for people. But to be skillful is the part that I don't think we talk about enough in these spaces. Because again, if we're talking about folks that are the most challenged segment of our community, they have the most barriers. Again, they have assets too, so we can't lose sight of that. But if we're talking about from a barrier standpoint, which is what we talk about a lot here, then they don't just need people that are passionate. They need people that are passionate and skillful to help them overcome and get to the destinations that they're capable of getting to. And I think my perspective, which I guess I want to say humbly, but I guess it's probably not a humble statement, but my perspective is that, again, kind of go back to our previous conversation. I love that you love what you do, like not you as a person,
right,
but
right.
Like people love what they do, but are you skillful with it too? We need the best teachers. We need the best social workers. We need the best promise guides, advisors. We need people that know how to do that thing, as people say, right? We need people like that in order to maximize the impact in our community. And that's the thing I would say. So don't, as passionate as you are, please never shut off your openness to learning and skilling up. Because once you do that, you're actually at some point going to become a disservice to the people that you say you want to help.
All right. Well, I'm definitely going to sign up for my classes next semester and everything. Now that you're saying that, that's what I needed. Do you have any questions for me? Oh, I'm nervous. He's thinking for a while. I'm nervous now.
So you as a person, or you as
whatever you want to ask.
So you asked me about, I don't even remember the exact question, but we got on the conversation about what's next, what's needed in the community. What do you see?
I think I was actually thinking about this yesterday, and I think it's actually having a perpetuity type of mindset of not just thinking, okay, I'm gonna do whatever I can to be the best. It's thinking about removing myself from my position, what I'm able to do, and creating something that will last. I think the promise itself will last. It has that perpetuity mindset. It'll always be here and never go away. And it kind of goes with what you said about the people. It's making sure the people that go into these roles to facilitate the scholarship, provide support services and everything, making sure that improves every year. And if someone leaves, we're not losing anything. And being able to put someone else into that role, have them learn, skill up, and continue the same work. I think that's what I would want to change. Yeah. I've seen that at other places in different positions where as soon as someone leaves, the whole structure changes. And if that's the case, then Were they, one, is it because you can't replace someone like that? But also, was the transition a good transition? Did they actually pass on the skills that they had to the next person? Were they set up for being able to fulfill their role if they're being called into a similar role? And that, I'm 33 years old, and I'm just now realizing like that's what really matters. I can do whatever I want throughout the day, but as soon as I'm gone, if nothing changes or nothing stays and I don't leave anything on, then it was pointless.
Yeah.
I was earning a paycheck for what?
Yeah.
So that's something that really I would like to see change. I hope if there's another community engagement coordinator that comes into my role, if I leave, then they know exactly what to do on a day-to-day basis. They know the work that I was trying to do. I mean, not to say that it needs to be the same,
Right,
but to understand what was working and what wasn't, and to learn from my mistakes, learn from what did work. That's what I want to see.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah. Okay. Got through that. All right. How can someone get involved in the work that you're doing?
Sure. So there's one way is volunteering. Mm-hmm. So CIS has a process in which a person could go to our website, indicate that they would like to get involved on the Get Involved page, right? And then they could sign up to volunteer. And then our staff would do like collect information, do background checks, and then help find a location to volunteer. Most of our volunteers are academic support volunteers, so they do some form of tutoring. Mm-hmm. And from a skill up standpoint, we do offer training for tutors, and particularly a newer element is that we're providing content training. Mm-hmm. So we're teaching literacy skills and or math skills facilitated by experts in those fields to help people to be more equipped as a tutor. So that's one way. We're a 501c3 nonprofit, so financial support is also involved. But also, going back to volunteers for a moment, that's individual volunteering, but also we have partnerships with businesses and corporations who also do it kind of as a group employee staff building activity. Of course, you all are involved as well, in that capacity. I believe at the work at Washington, the Young Leaders.
Oh, emerging leaders.
Yes.
At Woodward.
Yeah, at Woodward. Sorry.
Yep.
Yeah.
We were just there today.
Exactly.
It was a good time. Those kids are funny sometimes, but we have a good time there. So
that's good.
All right. I think that's all I got for you.
Okay.
So thank you. Appreciate your time.
Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity.
Dropping the knowledge on us, got us thinking about the future and how to skill up and whatnot. So appreciate your time.
All right. Appreciate you.
Thank you for sharing your story as well.
Oh, it's a pleasure.